How does acupuncture work? This is a big question, and we're going to answer that here and now. The challenge with understanding acupuncture is that we often use a scientific modern mindset. Acupuncture is a very ancient practice. The way people thought back then, their whole concept of the world, all of that was different. So for today, for just this video, let's take science, let's take modern medicine, let's put that off to the side, and let's jump into the ancients' mindset and how they looked at the universe, how they looked at the world, how they looked at the human body. By the end of the video, you will understand the basics of how acupuncture works. At the core of understanding acupuncture, you have to understand qi. So what is qi? Is it this magical energy? Yeah, kind of. Actually, it is. It's a magical energy, but most importantly, think of qi as function. The reason that the heart beats, that the stomach digests food, that everything in your body works, all the functions in your body, that's qi. So you don't necessarily even have to think of it as magical energy. Just think of it as that function. It's the driving force that makes that happen. Like how blood flows through the veins, qi flows through these channels called meridians. These channels flow on the surface of the skin all the way deep into the limbs and then deep into the organs as well. So there basically is nowhere in the body that the meridians do not reach. To put another way, there is nowhere in the body that qi cannot go to.
Multipass.
Qi must move in order to tell the body what to do. If qi stops moving, the body stops working. Along the meridians, there are these points in Chinese called xuewei, which translates to cave points. The qi flows along the meridian and pools in these caves. These pathways on the surface of the skin connect deep into the body. And this is why putting an acupuncture needle just on the surface of your skin can help the qi flow deep into the organs, deep into the body, and it can help correct the function that is not working there, whether that be something with the lungs, having trouble breathing, something with digestion, whatever the function is, simple needle on the surface of the skin can send the energy deep. The easiest way to imagine it is a wire flowing to a lamp. So in the wire, we have electricity flowing. If the wire gets broken, it gets snapped, it has damage, then the electricity cannot flow and the light will not turn on. Whereas if we can find a way to get that wire connected, then it will work again. So acupuncture is kind of a little bit like that. You have the qi, so kind of like the electricity, flowing along the meridian, kind of like the wire, and then there is a spot maybe along the acupuncture point or somewhere along the meridian there where the qi is having trouble moving. It's having trouble getting to the other end. We take an acupuncture point, and by putting it in there, it helps to connect that. It helps to release the energy and helps to let it flow along the meridian. Now, even though the concept is simple, the challenge is figuring out which point, which meridian to put the needle in. And that's where you have to have this deep understanding of what each point does, how they connect with each other, how the meridians connect with each other, how they connect with the different organs. This is where years and years of studying Chinese medicine comes into play. So even though the concept, the whole energy flow is simple, actually implementing that can be very difficult. Now it's time for Q&A from the random guy behind the camera. What's your question, random guy?
What if two separate acupuncturists give you the two different diagnoses?
Chinese medicine can have many different schools of thought. If you go to a school, there is kind of the standardized way of doing it, but there are lots of kind of obscure practices throughout China. So they might come up with very different types of diagnosis, which it's going to sound weird. They both might be effective. It's almost like you're coming at the same problem, but from totally different angles. When I was back in school, this was a cool thing that we learned. I had this patient and he was having some bladder problems. He was having trouble urinating. It's not funny. He was having problems. You know, this was one of my first years doing an intern. So this was actually one of my first patients. So naturally, I thought, as probably most people would, okay, there's something wrong with the bladder, maybe the kidneys, because the kidneys support the bladder. So I kind of came up with this plan, treating the kidneys, strengthening them, making them stronger, because urination flow wasn't strong enough. And I presented that to the practitioner who was observing me. He said, that's not bad. That might work. He said, but look at this. And so we started to dive in. I won't go into all the details, but he said, look at some of these symptoms. We started to dive in more. He said, what do you think about this? Think of the bladder as like a teapot, right? You turn a teapot, the tea flows out. But if you cover up that little second hole on the teapot, right? The teapot has 2 holes. If you cover that up, then it's actually hard for the water to go out of the teapot. So there's not actually a problem with the stem of the teapot it's that you're blocking that little hole. Well, in the body, that hole is the lungs. That's the top part. And so his idea was, instead of treating the bladder or the kidneys, which there don't seem to be any problems there, it seems to be an obstruction in the lungs. The qi is getting blocked in the lungs. So let's open up the qi flow to the lung. So we did that. And about 5 minutes in, I hear the bell coming from the treatment room, ding, 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 ding. And I'm running, he's like, take the needles out, take the needles out, I gotta go to the bathroom. And then he comes back and was like, that worked like magic. So if we were to have treated the kidney and the bladder, would it have done something? Probably, but it probably wouldn't have been as effective or as immediate as what we did with the lungs.
Would there be any consequences if the acupuncture stabs the wrong point? Let's say they're a bit more of an amateur.
Okay, first off, we don't usually use the word stab, right? Needling might be what we would say. It's not really stabbing. If they needle the wrong point, there really aren't any side effects. So it's almost like you can think of it like we were talking about the wire, right? Like with the electricity flowing. If the needle would help it to flow, to keep flowing. If it's already flowing fine and you put a needle in, it's probably just gonna not do much. To that, there are different needling techniques. And this gets into a lot more complicated stuff, where some would be tonifying, some would be releasing stagnation, some would be doing different things like that. So if you're, say, a weak constitution, and they do this very invigorating treatment, that might not be the best thing for you. But if it's just it's just needling a point that maybe you didn't really need needled, it probably isn't going to have much of a bad effect. It just won't really have any effect. It'll just be like, if a light switch is already on and you keep pressing for it to go up, it's like, no, it's already up. The light's on, it's fine. Oh no, but I want to keep pressing the light button up.
Let's say I do have my sewing kit and I accidentally stab into one of these points. Nothing will happen. There's nothing if I accidentally touch.
How are you coming up with these questions?
Hey man, at least
what kind of person is like sewing and then stabbing themselves with the needle?
There's a bunch of points on my hand.
Well, okay, first off, is the needle dirty? You don't want to be stabbing yourself with a dirty needle. You're gonna have other problems if that's the case. The acupuncture needle is incredibly thin. It's like a strand of hair thin. A sewing needle is a lot thicker. That sounds horrible.
What kind of metal is used as a needle?
Now it's just like stainless steel or whatever often. But in ancient times, they really liked to use gold and silver, things like that, because even in the West, we talk about the magical properties of gold and silver. So they kind of felt that there was that aspect to it. The problem nowadays is that would be cleaning those needles, right? I mean, first they'd be expensive, but that's okay. So you buy some needles, they're not super thick with some gold on it or silver. But then you wouldn't want to throw that away. You'd want to clean them, right? If you throw them away, then that's going to get really expensive really quickly. Whereas stainless steel, we basically just use one-time use needles now. We throw it away, put it in a biohazard, seems excessive, but that's what we do, into a biohazard container. And then people with full outfits come, and that's not that bad. But that's kind of the idea.
How painful is it?
Excellent question. If you think of the needle as basically as thick as a strand of hair, it's just a lot more sturdy. If you put a strand of hair just like a 1/4 inch into your skin, if even, would that hurt? Oftentimes what I've found in practice is people don't even realize that the needle has been needled yet. Like I'll put the needles in and then they'll be like, okay, when do we start? And it's like, no, it's happening right now. The needles are in you, I'm leaving, you can lie here and relax for a little bit. If you miss an acupuncture point and say you hit a tendon, that's maybe not as comfortable, or you get it close to a nerve or something like that. But generally speaking, as long as you're right on the point, the needling itself doesn't hurt. Now, the patient may and probably will have sensations. It can feel like a numbing sensation. It can feel like a distension. You can have all these different feelings. Usually though, after all the needles are in, people usually lay there for around 20 minutes. Lights are maybe down really low, some nice music's playing, you get the spa atmosphere, and you've got these needles in you. You don't feel them when they're in. People usually, when I come back, they're like, they felt totally chilled out. A lot of people will fall asleep and they just feel really mellow, really chilled out after that. Some people claim, this is what people have told me, that they actually feel the chi moving down the meridians from where the point is, and then they feel it go into their different parts of the body. That's not common, but some people do say that they feel that.
I've seen treatments where after the needle's put in, they put some sort of machine onto the needle. Is that to vibrate or to?
Yeah, that's like an electrostimulation thing. So it's just like these little clamps that you'll put on the needle, and it can send electrical pulses to it. So it can have all different pulses, but that's what it does. It's just to provide extra stimulation of the point. I mean, traditionally they didn't do that. Traditionally, if you wanted, obviously, 2,000 years ago, they didn't have a little electro stim machine. But what they would do would be different types of needling techniques. So instead of just putting the needle in and hands off, they might say, for instance, turning it clockwise would tonify or strengthen. Turning it counterclockwise would release. So they might just do a little bit of that or a little bit of that, and then that's it. Putting it without doing any types of techniques is just considered neutral. So that just helps the chi flow. It goes in the point. It will help release that energy. It kind of too is a little bit based on the idea of the body knows how to heal itself. And so we're just kind of giving it a little bit of a better idea of what it needs to do.
So how expensive is it for a session, or is it like multiple sessions as a package usually?
So I don't really know what the prices are now. I know that sometimes they have what's called community acupuncture, where it's not as private. You're in a big room, you're often just in a chair. It'll usually happen a lot faster. That's going to be a much better price. Or you could go obviously to a private consultation. And generally speaking, often we'll set you up on a treatment plan, which is usually like, hey, let's start you off with 8 treatments, maybe once a week, twice a week. We'll do it for a month to whatever. We'll see how, and then we'll kind of reassess at that point. That's a pretty common way to do it, but some people don't. Some acupuncturists don't. They'll just do a treatment like, how do you feel? Okay, good. You want to come back next week, or you feel okay? Now, kind of with any treatment, it's like they say, pain is the first thing to come and the first thing to go. After a treatment, usually the pain or the symptoms will go away quite quickly, but that doesn't mean that the root problem has been resolved. So generally we say, yeah, you're feeling better, but maybe come in another couple times and let's really get this resolved, or else it may come back.
Is it covered by insurance?
Depends on the state that you're in, the insurance that you have. But yes, many insurances will pay for acupuncture, especially if an MD says so. Hey, and if you don't want to go get acupuncture, you say, I want to stimulate my energy in a different way. Why don't you try Days Coffee? Days Coffee. Only 15% the caffeine of regular coffee, so it'll stimulate your meridians a little bit. And it's delicious. And they use these natural enzymes to get rid of the caffeine, not the harsh chemicals like the bad guys at the big places. No, not the good people at Days. So head on over to Days and use my code in the description below. Get yourself big savings and buy a whole bunch of stuff. So acupuncture may sound simple from one point of view, but again, it also is very complicated. The meridians can get complicated. You need a very comprehensive understanding of how acupuncture works. So please Do not go into your sewing kit, get a needle, and just start stabbing yourself willy-nilly. That would be a horrible idea. That wouldn't do anything. If you want acupuncture, absolutely, you have to go see a professional acupuncturist. And there are many all over the world now. It is very popular practice, and I'm sure that they are all good or pretty good. All right, everyone, if you enjoy this type of content and you want to learn more about cool stuff that maybe you don't know a whole lot about, please hit like and subscribe and leave a comment below. And if you have something in particular you want me to talk about, you're interested in, leave that in the comments below and we'll see what we can do. All right, I'll see you guys. Bye.